Hey, welcome back guys. Hopefully you were able to watch part 1 of my mental health testimony. If not, this would be a really good time to go back and watch it. Otherwise, the rest of this video won't make any sense. Just like in part 1, I'm going to continue to be painfully honest and vulnerable, probably more so than in the last one, so here we go again. So I left off at the end of my first relationship in my last video, and toward the end of that relationship there was this guy that I had kind of started to befriend. When that relationship ended, this guy kind of became my shoulder to cry on, and then we developed feelings for each other and we started dating. We dated for 3 years, from my junior year of high school to my freshman year of college. Now, pretty much from the minute we started dating, there was this voice in my head saying, this is a bad idea, don't do this, and just picking up on all of these red flags. But I felt like since he had been there for me, I kind of owed him. I owed it to him at least not to hurt him by ending the relationship already. And of course, like I touched on in my last video, there were some attachment issues there. I felt like this person's love was what was, finally maybe going to fix me, to fix this thing in me that felt like it had been broken for my entire life. Now, I want to say that every relationship has its good memories, just like every person has some measure of good qualities. But this guy was really manipulative and pushy. He made me feel small, and like what I wanted didn't matter as much as what he wanted. He knew how to kind of use my vulnerabilities to get me to do what he wanted, and sometimes that was physical things, whether I felt comfortable with those things or not. Now, I want to say this not to justify what he did, because there is no justification for it, but because for a long time I felt like I was crazy, like I was imagining that there was something so horribly wrong with this relationship. And if you've been through something similar, I'm sure you know that feeling, so I needed to understand why another person would treat me this way. And he just had a lot of crap in his past that was keeping him down and that he just wasn't dealing with. Hurt people, and when you haven't seen a relationship where two people treat each other well, you don't always know how to do that. Talking to my counselor several years later made me realize that that relationship was emotionally abusive. So at this point in the relationship, I didn't really feel like a human being anymore. I didn't feel like a person that was being loved and valued. I felt more like an object. I felt like I had lost all sense of control, not just over our relationship, but my life, because our relationship was a big part of my life at that point. So I started trying to take back control in some pretty unhealthy ways. I would occasionally self-harm. I had a lot more suicidal thoughts. I did destructive things like walking around alone at night. And everyone said that's dangerous, you shouldn't do that, but I didn't care what happened to me at that point. I just didn't care. There were even times that I, held medicine in my hand, thinking about just swallowing it all to end it all. But there was always something that stopped me. There was always something that got me to just put it all back and not do it. I should note that at this point, toward my freshman year of college, I was questioning a lot of things about my faith, which is normal. A lot of people do that when they go into college, but especially with all this kind of going on, I was thinking, God, where are you in all this? Where are you in this, really tumultuous time in my life? And Looking back, I see that he was right there. I see that he never left. He was the voice telling me not to end my life. He was whispering to me, I'm not finished with you. And if you keep going, if you don't do this, I will be with you every step of the way. He was also telling me repeatedly to end this relationship because it wasn't honoring him anymore. He had something better for me, but I wouldn't do it. I was attached to this guy at this point, and like I said before, I thought I needed that love to fix me. So as I started hearing this voice from God in my head, I started to get more and more uncomfortable, and I started to push back more and more against what he wanted versus what I wanted, what I felt like was right. And the more I did that, the more our relationship went downhill, because he wasn't in control anymore, and eventually he broke up with me, and that was unequivocally the kindest thing that he ever did. I took some time to grieve over this relationship, but once the dark cloud kind of passed, I started to realize that it was a wake-up call from God. I, for the first time in a long time, got to see who I could be without him. I had lost myself in this relationship and in trying to please him, and I could finally start figuring out who I was and start to worry only about pleasing God and in growing my relationship with him. And from that whole experience, I learned a few things. First, I finally learned that no other person or no relationship, no other love was going to fix me or complete me. Only God can fix what's broken and fill what's empty inside of me. And to try anything else, to try to fit anything else in that hole in your heart is idolatry and leads to so much more brokenness. Number two, sometimes God in his infinite wisdom allows us to suffer. I mentioned in my last video that I didn't always understand why I was struggling with anxiety if I had Christ. I wondered if I had enough faith, if I was praying enough. But I learned that sometimes, for reasons we're not going to understand, God allows suffering. And I felt like in my mental illness, he was saying to me what he said to Paul in 2 Corinthians, which is, my grace is sufficient for you. Depression and anxiety don't mean that I don't have faith. It just means that I have to trust God through the hard things. Along this journey, I also learned how to ask for help and how to accept help. When I was 18, I started seeing a counselor, and I talked to my doctor about medication. And I'm really glad I did both of those things. Both of those things have really helped me and still help me to this day. But of course, after the relationship and everything that I just described, I learned that my first cry for help needs to be to God. I always like to say that medication and therapy can help, but they can't heal. Only Christ can heal. So that, in a nutshell, is my mental health journey and my testimony of how God has helped me through it. Thank you all so much for taking the time to watch. If my story has helped you or encouraged you in any way, I would love to know that. Keep leaning on Christ, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.